Hello everyone, and welcome to a new Arabic lesson by Champollion. Today we're going to talk about one of the confusing topics in Arabic, which includes a number of words that are kind of similar to each other, but they are pretty different. So these words are the words with alif and noon. So the first one is inna, inna. The second is anna, anna, and the third is in, in. The fourth is an, an. So the important thing is to know is that all of these are what we call function words. They are not like refer to nouns or verbs, but rather to some grammatical function that you can understand it only through the context of a sentence. So that's why it's not always clear to have a direct equivalent, but the closest equivalent that we can use is for inna. It's more like indeed, which gives more emphasis to a sentence. Anna, it's more like that, and it is followed by a sentence. And there's in, which means something like if or a condition. And we also have an, which is more like to plus verb in an infinitive form. Let's do some examples. So, for the word inna, which means indeed, we can find a sentence such as إن المشكلة كبيرة. إن المشكلة كبيرة, which means indeed the problem is big. And for أن, we can find a sentence such as المشكلة أن الوقت ضيق. المشكلة أن الوقت ضيق. So here the problem is that the time is tight. So we see here the equivalence between the word أن and the word that. And then when we want to talk about in, which means if, so we can find expressions such as إن كنت تريد. إن كنت. We can find expressions such as إن كنت تريد. إن كنت تريد. Like if you wanted. And then we have the word أن, so we can find it in a sentence such as أريد أن أعرف. أريد أن أعرف. I want to know. So these are some basic examples of how to use these different words. But let's go deeper into each of them. And notice that there are so many other grammatical elements related to these words, such as the casing or like the word endings that is related to each of these, especially inna and anna. But let's not get into that because it can be a little complicated. So for the word inna, it's more of a function word that gives an emphasis to a sentence. So you can still, in many cases, use the same sentence without inna, but when you add inna to it, it will give more emphasis. For example, let's say a sentence such as السؤال صعب. السؤال صعب. The question is hard. So we can add inna to it, so it becomes إن السؤال صعب. إن السؤال صعب. Indeed, the question is hard. Or something like المحل مغلق. المحل مغلق. The shop is closed. And then we can add إن to it, so it becomes إن المحل مغلق. إن المحل مغلق. So it's something like indeed the shop is closed. And then we can also find inna in the context of that there is the verb say or said before it. So this verb in Arabic is قال or يقول with the different conjugations. So when we have the word sentence like قال إن لديهم مشكلة. قال إن لديهم مشكلة. He said that they have a problem. So here you notice the equivalence between inna and that. And then we have a sentence such as قلنا إن المشكلة صعبة. قلنا إن المشكلة صعبة. We said that the problem is hard. And then another example قالوا إن مشاكلنا سهلة. قالوا إن مشاكلنا سهلة. They said that our problems are easy. And then we have something like قلتم إن لدينا مشكلة. قلتم إن لدينا مشكلة. You said that we have a problem. So here you find a few examples, all coming after the verb say or قال, and showing that we use inna after it. And then we can also find it the same word inna, but it kind of changes the order of the sentence, because you know Arabic is mostly like the verb comes first by default, but of course the noun can come first. But when we have a sentence that starts with a verb like تدين فرنسا الهجوم, تدين فرنسا الهجوم, France condemns the attack. So if we want to add an emphasis to it, and we also want to change like the how the sentence starts, we can say inna for this sentence. So and it becomes inna فرنسا تدين الهجوم. إن فرنسا تدين الهجوم. So you find that the noun here, which is France, comes first and then the verb. And same for this other example. تؤيد مصر القرار. تؤيد مصر القرار. So Egypt supports the resolution in the context of the United Nations and stuff. So if you want to use inna, in this case, it would be إن مصر تؤيد القرار. إن مصر تؤيد القرار. So in this case, you find that the noun مصر or Egypt comes first and then the verb تؤيد, which means supports. Now we move to the word أن, which means that. So we find that we can see a few examples here, and all of these you'll find that this word is always followed by a sentence. So we can find a sentence like الوضع صعب, like the situation is hard, and then we can put it like that. نعرف أن الوضع صعب. نعرف أن الوضع صعب. So we know that the situation is hard. So you find here the word أن, and then it's followed by the sentence الوضع صعب. And then we can find another example here like الحقيقة أن الناس لا يعرفون. الحقيقة أن الناس لا يعرفون. The truth is that people don't know. And then another example here. أصعب شيء أن الناس يعانون. أصعب شيء أن الناس يعانون. So the hardest thing is that people suffer, or people are suffering. And then another example. سمعنا أن الضيوف وصلوا. سمعنا أن الضيوف وصلوا. So we heard that the guests arrived. So let's go a little deeper, knowing when to use أن here. So the first context that we can find it is when it comes after cognitive verbs. And cognitive verbs here mean like verbs like know, feel, see, hear, understand, and things like that. So we find that something like that. هل عرفت أن الضيوف وصلوا؟ هل عرفت أن الضيوف وصلوا? Did you know that the guests arrived? So here the cognitive verb we're talking about is عرف, so it's conjugated here as عرفت when we're addressing a male person. And then we can find another example here. شعرت أن الأمر خطير. شعرت أن الأمر خطير. I felt that the matter is serious. So again, here شعرت is the cognitive verb we're talking about, and it's the conjugation of the verb شعر or يشعر, but in the first person, so I felt. شعرت أن الأمر خطير. And then we have something like فهمنا أن الوضع صعب. فهمنا أن الوضع صعب. We understood that the situation is hard. So here our verb is فهمنا, which is فهم or يفهم, but here it's conjugated in the first person plural, like we understood in the past. And then we have something like رأيت أن الأصدقاء وصلوا. رأيت أن الأصدقاء وصلوا. So again, our verb here is رأيت, and then it's followed by أن, and the verb رأيت, it's the conjugation for the verb رأى or يرى, which means see, and it's conjugated in the first person in the past. And then there's another very common context where we are using أن, which comes after some kind of an abstract noun. You know, even in English we have things like the situation is that, the problem is that, the idea is that, the question is that, and things like that. So we can see it here, for example, in this sentence. الفكرة أن الأسعار غالية. الفكرة أن الأسعار غالية. So الفكرة here means the idea. The idea is that prices are expensive or prices are high. So this is how we started. الفكرة, and then we have أن. And then we have something like الحقيقة أن الناس لا يعرفون. الحقيقة أن الناس لا يعرفون. The truth is that people don't know. And here we're starting the sentence with the word the truth, which is like a concept or an abstract noun, and it is followed by أن, and then the sentence. And then we have something like أصعب شيء أن الناس يعانون. أصعب شيء أن الناس يعانون. The hardest thing is that people suffer. And here we find it's not just one word, but it's like a word with a comparative or superlative form. أصعب شيء. So this is together, it's the word or the expression that comes before أن. أصعب شيء أن الناس يعانون. The hardest thing is that people suffer. And then you have another example here, such as المشكلة أن الضيوف تأخروا. المشكلة أن الضيوف تأخروا, which means the problem is that the guests arrived late or were delayed. So here the concept or the abstract word is المشكلة, and it's followed by أن, and it's followed by a sentence. And then you have the word أن, which is basically like to in English that comes before an infinitive verb. So like I want to eat, we need to go, and things like that. So we have something here like أريد أن أشرب. أريد أن أشرب. I want to drink. So here أن is simply the equivalent of to, and then أشرب is the verb to drink, but it still needs to be conjugated with the same conjugation as the first verb, which here is the first person. So أريد أن أشرب. And then we have something like الولد يحاول أن يكتب. الولد يحاول أن يكتب. So in this case, the boy is trying to write. The boy is trying to write. So the verb here is يحاول, يحاول, and it is followed by أن, which means to, and then the other verb, which is the equivalent to the infinitive in English, like to write, it becomes يكتب. So it's also conjugated with the same conjugation as the boy. And then we have something like قررنا أن نسافر. قررنا أن نسافر. We decided to travel. So قررنا here is the verb قرر or يقرر, which means to decide, and then نسافر is the conjugation for the verb سافر or يسافر, and it's also conjugated with the same as the first verb. And then we have a sentence such as استطعت أن أفهم. استطعت أن أفهم. It means I was able to understand. And here for the verb, the first verb is the verb استطاع or يستطيع, which means to be able to. So in this case, it's conjugated for the first person. I was able to. استطعت. And then the word أن, which means to, and then أفهم, which means to understand, means understand, but it's also conjugated by first person. And then the last one here is in, which is basically a conditional word, which means if. We have another very common conditional word, which is لو, and you'll find it has, in many cases, they can be used interchangeably, but we'll not talk about it today. So here we're just talking about in. So you'll find it in many like common expressions, like of course many Arabic speakers or Muslims will say an expression like inshallah, and in this case you'll find that it starts with the word in, which means if. So this expression literally means inshallah, like if God wills. Like in is if, Allah is God, and sha'a is the verb yasha'a, which means to will. So inshallah, if God wills, or in English the equivalent expression is God willing. And then we have other expression like إن كان الأمر كذلك, إن كان الأمر كذلك, which is a very commonly used expression, but it simply means if so. But if you want to take it literally, like in كان الأمر كذلك, in here it means if, كان it means was, الأمر means the matter, and then كذلك is as such or such as that. So if it was like that, if the matter is like that, which means if so, إن كان الأمر كذلك. And then we have an expression like إن أردتم, إن أردتم, if you want, if we're addressing like a group of people, إن أردتم, if you, all of you want. And then we have an example such as إن استطعنا ذلك, إن استطعنا ذلك, if we are able to do so. So these are common ways of to use the word in, and you have some examples for that. Now let's do some exercises. I will not solve them here, but I will expect you to do so in the comments or on your own so that you can make sure that you understood the differences between these. If you need more exercises, please let me know. If you have any questions about this, also please let me know. So something like قال, are we using أن or إن or أن or إن? الضيوف وصلوا. So now you try to figure it out. شعرت الوضع صعب. So all of these words have been indicated or mentioned with their meaning in the examples before. So if there's a word that you don't know, please go back to the examples in the previous slides. And then we have something like أريد أسافر. So what word comes here? And then we have something like فرنسا تؤيد القرار, and there is a word in the beginning. What word is that? And then we have this example, المشكلة, and then there's a word, الناس لا يعرفون. And then we have this one, and then there's a word, and then أردت. So you just need to see which of these words fit in these empty spaces. So you just let us know your questions and see you in the next lesson. Thank you.